Hey everybody, it's Sarah and I'm back with Sade Combs because we enjoyed our conversation the other day. So we're back to be chatting doulas. And welcome, Sade.
Welcome. I'm happy to be here again. And hello.
Hello everyone. We were just sort of going back and forth about what to talk about today, and we both agreed that the importance of self-awareness in this work would be something that we both feel strongly about. You want to jump in there and start with what you're thinking, Sade?
Yes. The biggest thing working in this type of field is self-awareness. Always knowing yourself, the person, the people that you're engaging with, but also importantly, what a lot of doulas seem to, I guess, not really know the boundaries, I would say, is to learn to have self-care. And self-care can be in many ways. That's just taking a walk or not answering a phone call, or it's just basically just being to yourself, because everybody is required to be by themselves and allow that self-care to be acknowledged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's boundaries are a huge part of this work. I think self-care is very important, and I think the better your boundaries are, that in and of itself is a type of self-care, right? And
Correct.
for me, when we mentioned this topic, what came to me is that it's a way to learn about ourselves as well. And it's not like you get to a point where you just know everything. It's an ongoing process, and it's a wonderful opportunity to learn about yourself. And that could
Mhm.
be anything from um, having a challenge with just sitting with somebody, or having a challenge with somebody's beliefs or politics, or learning how to just what are your reactions, and understanding that that's maybe your reaction and it's not necessarily something to bring into the room. Does that make sense?
Yes, because a lot of times we will somehow navigate our own feelings into that person. And that is why the biggest thing when I was going through the schooling for Death Doula is the main thing that we fail to misunderstand is to learn to have space,
Yes.
learn to allow space within the room, the person.
Yes.
Um, that's a lot of things that a lot of people don't understand. They'll try to put their views, on that person, and you can't really do that
Mhm.
because they're going through their own stage. And it's just good to be that extra ear, but also giving them space and allowing them to speak of whatever it may be. But yes, having sacred space for yourself, that's like the two main things that
Mhm.
will make the process a lot easier.
And I think for a lot of people, sometimes we don't even know that we're doing that, right? We don't even, we're just so used to doing what we do that we're not always self-reflecting, and we're not always reflecting back of like, oh, that person doesn't really even care about that. That's my thing. And so then once you begin to start to notice those things about yourself, that's when you can start to become more, say, neutral, I think, to
Mhm.
the as you walk into the room with a different kind of openness to
Yes.
to the different energies that are in the room, and whether that's coming from the actual patient who's dying or coming from different family members.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then they can kind of see a lot of times a lot of people just depending on the field they are in, they always try to say, well, this was my experience, this is what I'm doing, this is what I researched. But sometimes it's good to have that knowledge, but it's also good to still have that space, because
Yes.
then you're allowing that person to understand that you can have all the experience in the world, but sometimes it's just good to just shut out all the noise and let them speak. Hmm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
speaking is a powerful tool that we can use and manifest. So it's good to create that kind of aura, I would say, around you, to just be kind of like you just said, neutral, grounded, respectful.
Mm-hmm. And so how can we start to notice that within ourselves? So one thing that I find, um, I was recently training someone, and we walked into the room and she was just talking a lot of questions. And I began to see that as her nervousness and her discomfort. And a lot of times I'm thinking that when you say space, sometimes that means like quiet. It doesn't
Mhm.
always mean quiet, but it could be meaning quiet. And sometimes people take a while to talk or to
Mhm.
tell you what's going on, right? They're not always just, it's not like you just walk into the room and they're going to tell you their most intimate, what's on their mind. You have to develop that relationship. And then you have
Yeah.
to allow that room for that to unfold.
Yes, because when they're at the most critical, the last stage,
Mhm.
generally no normally they don't talk, they don't communicate, but it's still good to at least have that presence come into play of, I know somebody's here, I
Mhm.
can hear them, but it's good to acknowledge that their presence is still here. That's can be very comforting,
Yes.
and to acknowledge that, because a lot of times if we're so busy talking about stuff, we're missing everything that we're supposed to know. It's the same way with how nature works. There's signs and synchronicities all around us.
Mhm.
We can't pay attention if we're not willing to just take a step back and just acknowledge of, let them speak or let this person speak, just so you know more about that person. Then you start having these missing pieces all come together why they are the way they are.
Mhm. Mhm. And it's true, I mean, we call that 11th hour when somebody's actively dying. Is that the time that you're talking about? The last few days, a week, it could be
Yeah.
a week to 0 days. And the communication becomes less and less. And it switches to things like breathing, or it switches to things like maybe a little twitch on the hand, or it changes to things like maybe they just look off to the right. That I see those as forms of communication, but they can be very subtle forms of communication and things that we're not used to. So if you're not really just being present to that moment, it's very easy to miss those things.
Correct.
Yes.
Because, they all have telltale signs.
Mhm.
Um, and another topic that, was discussed was about, according to, like you just said, the 11th hour, a lot of times when, I wouldn't even say it's paranormal activity, it's more of the soul kind of connecting to that other side. And they are, quote unquote, from a scientific mindset, it's hallucinations. I mean, personally, how can you kind of say that if you're not in that person's shoes? You're not in their mind, you're not in their journey. So whatever they're seeing something. And it's not, delusion, or it's not them just seeking attention. I mean, they're fixing to pass on. So they're trying to close each door and memory that was stored in their mind and experience it, even if it does sound bizarre or weird that they're talking to something in the corner. These are their individual experiences. So that's why it's so good and important to allow them to have that space.
Yes. And I would even go a step further and say, oftentimes those are actual real visitations. And as the veil is becoming thinner and thinner, and there is less and less of a wall between this life and the next mystery, because we don't exactly know what that mystery is. We've heard some people come back and say what they thought it was. But as those veils become thinner, they begin to pay attention to and see other things. And oftentimes those present themselves as beings, people, maybe people that they knew, maybe it's a small child, maybe it's their dog that's coming back over, it could be grandparents. The research does show that this is very common, that people begin to experience this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think it's pretty extraordinary that our mind, and our mind, well, a lot of people don't know, our mind is one of the most powerful tools that we have. And our brain was organized to have all these different coordinates being tied together and all these connections. Why do you think psychics or mediums are able to tap into certain things that we can't physically see? Is because we are more than just flesh. We're more than just that. We're a part of something that is a universal, statement that it's crazy how our minds just go through those stages and it happens.
yeah. It's and yes, I hear a lot of medical terminology about hallucinations, and to me, it doesn't matter whether you see it as a hallucination or not. I treat it as real, whatever the person is talking about or experiencing. I treat that as as something that is real for them in that moment.
Correct. Because I mean, it's crazy how the spiritual world is basically here. It's just certain people are not willing to accept certain things because of the phenomena of it possibly having a loved one just walk past you. How is that real? And a lot of times I like to have people that have a scientific mindset on it, but also a spiritual, because you can't say that one is different from the other, because it all really corresponds of what it is. You could have a scientific equation of how the brain works and whether it is a hallucination or somebody is communicating from the other side. There's still a message in that equation, just like it is in a spiritual way. So it's good to have both opinions on the matter, instead of one saying it's not true, it's not possible, and then you have some that are just saying it is possible. It's
Mhm,
good to just kind of combine those two experiences and just say, hey, it can go both ways and still be the same equation.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and I think I don't know why, I'll just share with you. I've been working with a woman since I think October or September. And the other day, a lot of people are saying she's having hallucinations. And the other day she was wanting me to get a lawyer. And I said, well, why do you need a lawyer? And she said, because of all these contracts. And I said, well, what are these contracts? And what will the lawyer do for you? And she said, I need to get rid of these contracts. They're for this place where, meaning the place where she's living. And I thought to myself, oh, interesting. And then I said, well, can you just rip those up? And then I was thinking of it in terms of I'm sorry, of like karmic contracts or spiritual contracts that we make before we come to this lifetime. And
Correct.
so I just thought that was really interesting. And she sort of, when I said, can you just rip them up? She sort of looked at me, and that would be just as an efficient way to clear those contracts as anything, I thought. But I
Yeah.
think it's really important to, as you're saying, to kind of open your mind to what is in that room, and to not just assume that that's an hallucination, or just not assume that she's paranoid, or not assume whatever our assumptions might be, but to get creative, and to really listen to how to alleviate somebody's anxiety, not
Correct.
pretend it's just some, a lot of people are saying she's paranoid and this and that. Well, in one sense she may be, but in another sense she's in stress. And so how can we help alleviate that stress?
Correct. Because I was just saying in the chat before the other night at the Death Cafe chat, we were discussing about how kind of religion can play in a factor of that fear of the paranoia. So we were basically saying, basically as ominism, and basically it's a broad spectrum of, basically it's like believing that all religions have one singular truth, and that is just simply love. Whether the situation is somebody has 6 arms and legs, whether it's Jewish, whether it's Greek practices, whether it's Christianity, atheism, whatever the case may be, a lot of people don't realize everything always has a singular truth. And that's what it's like, I believe, to be personally a death doula, is because you're going to counteract and meet with so many different people from different religions and situations. And it's so good to have that mindset of knowing you're walking into a room where somebody may not believe in what you believe in, but you respect them enough to acknowledge this is your journey, and whatever you believe in, that's perfectly fine with me. Because it's like a lot of people, they just think everything has to be by the book, or to tell the dying person this is the way how they should do it. No, how they
Right.
should do it is how they should do it. We're the advocate for them, and we're the voice that speaks to the dead. Basically, when you think about it, we're the voice that they just can't be heard, acknowledged, or seen, even if family is involved. And to be that voice for the dead, that's an extraordinary event to take place.
Yes, I think it's crucial that we leave our beliefs at the door, is kind of what you're saying, right? And I see some people who are like, just follow the river or do this or do that. And it's for me, it's really crucial to listen to the imagery of the person who's going,
Yes.
because it may be very different from mine. There's a lot of people who maybe it's Jesus who are going to come meet them, or maybe it's Allah, or maybe it's the rabbi who's going to walk them over. I don't know. And like what you're saying, it doesn't really matter,
Mhm.
right? It's that person's journey. They're in the chute. They're the only ones going. No, we're not following them, right? And so it's kind of whatever works for them in that moment, I think.
Yeah. And like preparing just for like a birth doula and midwife doula for birth, it's the same thing. You're basically coaching that person. This is how you need to push when the baby is coming. This is how you need to have your mindset when the baby is coming. It's the same thing. It's just an ending chapter for your soul to carry on to a different dimension, place, unknown, mystery world.
Yeah.
Um, so it's good to have those kind of point of views where it's like it's not just one singular thing, there's more. And you
Mhm.
just have to kind of take certain things and think outside the box of how can I make this person comfortable? How can I ease their mind, even though I know they're on the verge of death? Because anybody could walk in the room and say, yeah, you're dying. You
Mhm.
know what that does to somebody's mindset? That puts more fear and paranoia versus, like you just said, go down the river. This is the way you have to do it. All those fears, all those thoughts, they need to be blocked out in their sacred space when they are passing on. The more peace that you have in the room, the more uplifting thoughts, mindset, whether that's, engaging in, having a room of therapy in the room to keep them calm, but just to keep that person calm. It takes a lot of strength for one person, if not themselves, to bring themselves out of that part of, yeah, I know I'm dying, but at least I have all this support behind me that's going to carry me on.
Well, you actually, just to circle back to the original intent of our conversation, I think what you really just brought up is to really learn about yourself, and because at the end the veil is very thin, the vibrations are very thin. So all of whatever is in us, whatever energy we bring into that room, the person who's there feels. And so if we're uncomfortable with dying, if we're uncomfortable with their beliefs, if we're uncomfortable with whatever, that is going to radiate through that room. So for us to really work on ourselves to get to a place where we can be very relaxed, and we can just be sitting there, as you say, as a comforting presence, as somebody who's open to whatever that mystery is, that we have ideas about what it might be, but we don't exactly know what happens. We may each have our own idea about it. But the more that we can trust that, one thing we do know is that we all die, right? And
Correct.
so the more that we can just trust in that process, and that allow that person has some kind of inner wisdom that's going to help them along the way. The same thing, like as a baby's being born. I mean, they just push, like something happens that is beyond us for that baby to be born. I think the same thing is beyond us for the person to die. There are people who have gone before us. We just don't have that same view of when we grab a baby, right?
Yeah.
So
And to
it's
me, I think like the example would be of how, I saw a quote and it basically was, how they would picture them dying is somebody picking you up like a little child and
mm,
just carrying you to the room. And
mm,
that is the inner peace that that person needs,
mm.
because all that wisdom that we're giving them is a building up of momentum of there's nothing but peace where I'm fixing to go, and I'm completely content with that. And
Mm.
that is a miracle for that person to think that way in those last moments, last seconds, last weeks. it's good to be able to be that person for them.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for myself to take the teaching of the people who are dying, because I think it's really interesting. What I found is that for the most part, people have been incredibly generous with me in offering me those teachings. And it's not always what I'm bringing to them. Oftentimes it's what they're showing me or allowing me to witness. So it's really important to, yeah, yeah.
They teach us a lesson. They teach us, stuff about the body. They teach us about their mindsets and how the stages of it changes dramatically. One day they look good, and they're just up eating, they're full of life. And then the next minute, gone. And
Yeah.
it teaches us a history about death, of not of being so scared about it, but acknowledging that it is real, it happens. But
Mhm.
it's up to people in the death industry to be able to correlate with so many people to make them understand of the more we study situations like this, the more people know what to look for. And they're
Mhm.
not kind of like, oh, well, like you just said, she's turning purple. It gives people more insight of this is why they're turning purple. And it just gives them not just a medical diagnosis, but more of a spiritual as well. And
Mhm.
it just combines those two together, and it makes it so much easier for families to kind of understand it.
Yeah, that this is the process of the body shutting down. Yeah, which for a lot of people, they're not expecting, right? They're not expecting somebody to not eat or to not drink or to change color. Yeah, yeah. Mm, wow. Mm. So how do you, let's see, when we say, how do you work on yourself around this stuff?
Self meditation, believe it or not.
Meditation? Yeah, of
Um, and
course I believe
also hurt
that.
as well, meditation, music, the sounds, because because we're energy, we need something that is energy based that can kind of moderate that when there's a lot of outside influence in your own mental capacity too as well. So me personally, I like to meditate, either write or just be outside or water my plants because they're my babies. So
Plants are,
it's good to kind of have that, earthly connection to certain things where will ground you with no medicine at all. It's just inner peace.
yes, yes. I think meditation is a fantastic tool, and I also think sitting with nature is just really rejuvenate. It can be very rejuvenating and refreshing and grounding to be sitting out by a tree or under a tree or by a river. Absolutely. Exercise too is a really good way, and self-reflection. It's funny. I was saying something to my son. Well, everybody self-reflects. I mean, he was saying everybody's self-reflective, and I said no. Everybody is not. And it's just really important for us to ask ourselves questions and to think about, well, how did that work with what I did there? And was that the right thing to do? And how would I do it next time? And to really, yeah, I just think of it as an endless unfolding of learning. And, you get better at it as you go. But I don't know that we ever know everything. Yeah, I don't know.
Knowledge, what I've been learning the past couple of days, knowledge is power, self knowledge, personally. Because a book can tell you A, B, C, D, but until you
Right.
actually experience something hand on, that's when the true momentum and power comes from. That's where the
Right.
true authentic nature stems, and people can see that radiate off you. And I think
Mm,
sometimes having that more self, control, learning different things about your, like you just said, your own self, your own mindset, that that's like a stepping stone to like your soul kind of upgrading to something else. And it's like, I didn't think I can get to this place. Now I'm in this place. So it's
right.
good to have that kind of barriers to where this is where I need to go, and this is what I need to allow in my own space.
Mhm, mhm. I love that word allow.
Mhm.
It's a really beautiful word that's just kind of opening. And we do sort of stop so many things. And so if we can just allow it, if you can just allow yourself to sit with someone, if you can just allow your discomfort and not try and override it or hide it or chatter through it, or I think even sometimes focusing too much on the physical body can be a way of blocking that moment, I mean, we each have our own ways that we kind of block things, and the more we can allow that spaciousness, it's really key for me. Yeah.
Yep. It's like they say, when they kind of say you can kind of block your own blessings, that's as easy as a negative thought pattern. It's as easy as thinking I can't do this when you can do it. But the universe is listening to everything that you're saying. So it's kind of like you have to, in your own mindset, think of it as, how can I change the perspective? How can I change my mindset? How can I do that without having such always negative thoughts, connotations, beliefs? I can reverse it and change it to something else powerful. And then things can just manifest and come quicker to you when your mindset is more at ease.
Yeah. I mean, you're quite young. How did you get into all that meditation?
I think it was every person that I've encountered, they're an experience. I would say they're a person that's meant to come in my pathway for me to learn a lesson from, whether that's a lesson, a season, a blessing. So I take these different individuals and I learned that there's a truth and there was a lesson in each of these individuals. So I can further tell my story of, this is how I made it. This is how I was able to incorporate a lot of things to keep me grounded, to keep me level-headed, to keep me to understand that nobody is perfect, but we can do different things to alleviate, if not change, the factor of how we treat one another and how birth and death should be accepted as one, and not one is more accepted than the other. So it's more about like acceptance, being around so many people, whether they were karmic individuals, whether they were just people that just needed to be in my pathway for a little bit and then moved along, whether it was spirit guides, I don't know. But what I do know is that each person was a lesson for me to understand.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I always think that with every meeting that we have with anyone, we're either clearing or creating karma. And if I kind of keep that front and center, it really helps me to be a better person.
Yep.
Because
you kind of start acknowledging certain things and, not letting this person have, you kind of see the red flags, you kind of see, from a distance, your own personality is like, I don't like this person. But did you really look past why this person is the way they are? And a lot of people they don't want to acknowledge that everybody has a shadow side and everybody has this side where people see on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But just like the yin yang factor, if you can't have balance, then one is going to manifest more than the other one. So it's kind of having kind of like a medical, but also spiritual side on it. Of sometimes the people you encounter, they're just doing their karmic duties, and that's their contract of what they needed to do. And it's kind of hard when you describe it to other people, because they're like, what is a karmic debt? What is a karmic contract? Before we initially came here, we had already made an allegiance to be something, or being a family, or being a dog, and may not even know it. But that's something that we already established when we were up there. So we don't know. So it's always good to see each person or experience, or even a place, as an experience, because that experience in the long run, it'll make a lot of sense to the missing pieces of your puzzle of your life.
Yeah. And oftentimes it's those people who really light us up, that they're lighting up a part of ourselves that we're not in touch with, or that we're not conscious of. And so we just say, oh, we don't like them, as opposed to going, well, where's that bully in me? Or where's that bossy person in me?
Yeah.
That's
because
a
I
whole other conversation.
because I didn't realize, when you start looking more into it, everybody is a reflection of yourself. And that's scary to kind of think about it like that, but everybody is. When you think about it, there's no possible way anybody in this world can be perfect, happy all the time. There's no way. There's no possible way, because we're human. We experience human behaviors, thoughts, sensations, emotions. So to say we can't be this way is impossible, because we have to have some type of, I wouldn't even say it's inner darkness. It's learning to just accept that this is really an authentic self of you, but this is also a radiant self of you. So to combine them together, it's you. You're creating your own self.
Yes, and I think that we came here to have a human experience. Our souls came here to have a human physical body experience. And yeah, for sure. Well, we've kind of gone to a half hour, and I'd like to keep these conversations to a half hour just so people can listen on their walk or whatever they do. But we're going to keep doing this. We're going to learn how to do some Facebooking live, which is going to be new for both Sade and myself. But we're gonna upgrade our skills here, and we'd love to hear from people and hear what kind of topics do you want us to talk about. If there's things you're curious about, we'd like to know, and we look forward to meeting again. Thank you so much, Sade.
Thank you.